Good afternoon, LEC community. First of all, I'm hoping that you're having a great Friday. My name is Edgar Palacios. I am the founder of the Latinx Education Collaborative, an organization that is dedicated to increasing the representation of Latinx education professionals in K-12. This is my first time live streaming by myself, and I am doing it as a favor to Susana, who is taking a day of self-care. And so, first of all, those of you who are joining us, thank you so much for viewing us. I apologize that I may not do as good of a job as Susana when it talks about the article that we're going to talk about today. But it's an article that means a lot to me, and it's something that I think is really important to discuss, which is the added value of Latinx and Black teachers that was published on 2020 by the Federation of Associations in Behavioral Art and Brain Sciences. So I have a couple of thoughts. So this organization is based on the fact that we have to absolutely increase the representation of Latinx educators in K-12. Most of you know this, 25% of students today in K-12 identify as Latinx or Hispanic or Latino, and only 8% of teachers do nationally. Now in Kansas City, that number is, I wouldn't say significantly lower. It is lower. It is like 5%. And we have districts such as KCK Public Schools, where the number of Latinx students is as high as 52%. I know Kansas City Public Schools, I think that number is at 28%. And so our community, our Latinx students are absolutely in the classrooms, as most of you know. And I believe that they absolutely deserve to see themselves reflected in the teachers that serve them. And so this article is interesting because Travis Bristol is a who authored part of the study, I believe, is a phenomenal thought leader in this space. I've had the pleasure of hearing him speak a couple of times, and I can't disagree with anything he's saying. For example, some of the reasons that he's saying that Black and Latinx teachers have an added value in this work is because, one, Black teachers have a higher level of multicultural awareness. I think we all know that. I think that most of us are proximate to the communities that we serve. I mean, I think, innately understand that it is so important for us to connect with our students on that level, and that it makes a huge difference to them. The other thing that they state, Latinx teachers have the added advantage of the shared language with their Latinx students. Quote, Latinx teachers functioning as role models for students of color, develop positive school expectations, foster a sense of belonging, and improve subsequent educational outcomes. It also says that Latinx students also tend to take more advanced placement and international baccalaureate courses when taught by Latinx teachers. Clearly, we do have some impact when students see themselves reflected in the teachers who serve them. I want to say hi to Delia. Delia, thanks so much for joining me. Again, I've never done this by myself, so I appreciate you being here and joining me on this journey. Graciela, what's up? I can still feel your energy after a conversation a couple of days ago, so thank you for sharing your joy and your passion with us. I'm also going to think about this and talk about this a little bit differently. I think sometimes that it's ridiculous that we actually have to establish why it is important for our students, all of our students, students of color and white students, to have access to teachers that look like them. To me, that is so important, and I'll share you a little bit of my journey. I think most of you know this, and if you don't already, I was born in Miami, Florida, and I had the pleasure of growing up in a community that I saw myself in. I was able to speak Spanish to mostly everybody. I heard classes in Spanish. I was able to speak Spanish in schools without being told that that was the wrong thing to do, or being told that I needed to speak English, because I had people that looked like me who also understood my lived experiences, and it meant the world to me. And I didn't realize how much it meant the world until I moved to Spokane, Washington. And as I tell everybody, Spokane, Washington, back in 2000, actually, it was 1997 when I moved up there, did not have a large Latino community. Definitely, I think I was like most of us. Sometimes you're the only Latino in the spaces that you're in. And I remember, I always share this interaction because I think it's important to name it and to give life to it. I remember sitting next to a young girl my first day of sixth grade. I was terrified because it was a new space for me. I'd never lived in Spokane before. Clearly, I was anxious. I had all these things, but I was also excited. This was a new experience for me. And the little girl that I happened to sit next to that day, her name was Lindsay. I don't recall her last name. That's not what I recall these days, but I remember her name was Lindsay. And she said, you know, I don't want to sit next to a dirty Mexican. And I think that moment stuck with me because clearly it was probably the first manifestation of discrimination. It was the first encounter of racism. It was a lot of those things that I hadn't actually experienced prior to living in Spokane, Washington. And I think Miami can be a very shielded place. It can create a bubble where, if you feel like life is good, but it's definitely not reflective of our entire country. And I really wish that I had a teacher at that point that I could talk to and say, yo, this happened to me. How do you navigate this? And I did not have a Latino teacher from sixth grade on. I think the first Latino teacher that I had was probably in college. And that was a meaningful experience. Although I was really upset that it was a Spanish teacher, and she made me do extra work because she knew that I could speak Spanish. So I was a little mad about that. I didn't want to work as hard as the other students, or I didn't want to work harder than the other students, I should say. Although I do wish that I continued in that pathway so I could have gotten a minor in Spanish or something like that. It would have been helpful. Anyway, so I share that with you because that's my lived experience, and it may be my only experience. And if you're listening, I'd love for you to kind of consider the fact that were you benefit from seeing teachers that look like you and understood your background and understood the neighborhood that you came from? And why is it that sometimes we have to explain that and we have to build awareness around the added value of Latinx and Black teachers? Why is it important? Why do we have to say why do we have to continually talk about this? This should be just an accepted standard. Now, I get a lot of pushback too. I get a lot of pushback and where folks ask me are you saying that white teachers shouldn't be teaching Black and brown students? I am not saying that at all. I am a product of white teachers, period. Literally from sixth grade on, everything I learned was at school was from a white teacher, and I did decently. But I wish they had a different level of understanding for the situations that my family and I were going through at that time. I will say that. I also wish I had somebody to help me understand that maybe I didn't have to assimilate. Maybe I could do something differently, or they would have modeled a different way of interacting with the world. And so I think about all those missed opportunities that I had by not growing up in a place where my culture and my community and my values were reflected. And I think about that for our students as well. I know as our community continues to grow, right now we're 1 out of every 4 students identifies as Latino or Latinx. I think about them in the classrooms, and particularly in rural environments. I think about them in suburban districts where they may be the only Latino in coming up in their classroom or in their school building or in their district, and not seeing anybody that looks like them or has a shared story with them. Not to say that they can't identify with other issues of humanity, but I think it's so important that we give voice to those students and that we show up for them. And so that's why I'm incredibly passionate about this work, because I absolutely inherently believe and know the value of representation in classrooms. I absolutely believe this in this work. I believe in the works. I look at the folks that are on the screen. So Marta, how are you doing? Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Edwin, good to see you. I absolutely love the passion and the expertise and the cultural richness that folks like Delia and Graciela and Marta and Edwin bring to their students every single day. I absolutely love that our students have access to that kind of talent and to those kind of professionals and those kind of people that not only understand them from an educational perspective, but also understand the struggles. They understand the struggles of maybe immigration. They understand the struggles of what it is to be bilingual, or what it is to not understand or comprehend English the first day of school, or what it is to feel different or ostracized or other in this community. And so that is so helpful for the emotional maturation of students. It's so helpful to be in a space where you can feel safe and loved and understood for all these things. And so that's why I'm passionate about this work. And so while I love this little article, and I think that we're going to need more articles to continue to express our worth as Latinos in educational spaces, to expand the added values. I think it's also ridiculous that we have to do that. I think it's kind of sad when we center other experiences versus our own in the classroom. And I feel really sad when I have conversations with our educators where they feel like they can't be fully who they are in their spaces and their environments. And that's also the feeling that drives me in this work and in this organization. And Delia, thanks so much for staying with me, because I know I may be rambling, but like, this is my first live stream by myself. I don't know if people want to hear me or not, but that's okay, because I have things to say. I love being surrounded around Puerto Rican and Mexican leadership in Chicago. It was awesome. I felt like we had tias and tios and abuelos and other family members in the building. Overall, I had a pretty diverse group of teachers. I loved it. I went through cultural shock once I went to college. I struggled for real. Absolutely. I think I remember going to college. I went to music school. That's a whole different conversation that we can talk about in a different live stream. Marta, I love you. I love you so much. I remember going to UMKC, going to music school, and being like, what did I decide to do with my life? and not understanding the value. I missed my parents, even though I didn't know I missed them. I miss eating gallo pinto. I missed drinking horchata. My mom sometimes made horchata, and randomly, because that's not really something that we drink in Nicaragua. I missed the carne asada. I missed like all these cultural things that I didn't even know were important to me until I didn't have them. Right? I think that that's something that we forget, that sometimes when you're removed away from the community or those cultural connections or those ties, like, we lose a little bit from ourselves, and then we can't actually fully show up for our students. We can't fully show up for our community. And that is such a loss, because when we show up in these classrooms as we are, who we are, empowered by our heritage, empowered by our community and our connections to that, like, we're modeling a different way for our students. We're absolutely modeling a different way for our students. We're saying, hey, you don't have to navigate these environments in the ways that we've been taught. You can actually retain some of these, we can retain some of these cultural identities, or all of them, and still determine what our success is, and still determine how we show up in these spaces. And so, Marta, you say, I miss not having to always explain my perspective. Exhausting. Yes. Why do I have to continuously talk about the value add that Black and brown teachers bring to our schools? Why is it the centering of the conversations? I'd rather center the conversations on saying, what are the things that our students are missing because they can't fully represent as they are? And I'm thinking about all the different levels of intersectionality, right? I'm thinking about being a young woman, being gender nonconforming, being transgendered, being Latino, however you identify, however our students identify, are we creating spaces for them to be who they are, and showing them that there are loving adults in the building that may not, we may disagree with the way that some of our students live their lives. We may disagree with some of the, because of our religious practices, because of our cultural practices, whatever that is. But are we creating spaces in the classroom where students can be as they are? And I think one thing that I really enjoy about the community that we've built, and before I go on to Lucero, what's up? We'll check out our new book. Lucero, make sure to put that book in the comments. I think it's Soy Mujer, a collection of poetry by Lucero. So I celebrate that, by the way. I love art, and I'm glad that our community is continuously working on sharing their truth through their art. It is so important that when we show up in our fullness and our full authenticity, and we demonstrate that we can be Latino and we can center our cultural identity, and we can live in a space where we can dismantle the current systems and not adopt the characteristics of white supremacist culture, and show up in a way that is inherently in our blood and who we are as a community. Like, that is such a powerful expression that ultimately, I believe, like, just permeates the classroom, and it permeates the students, and it gives them a different way of thinking and achieving and being in those spaces. Graciela, and where educators of color can be as they are and trusted as professionals to do what's best for our students of color. Absolutely. Why do we why is it that as black and brown people we continuously have to explain that we know what we're talking about? And why is it that we have to rely on data to tell you what we already know? Because we have lived it, we have seen it, we understand this. We absolutely understand this. We absolutely understand what it is to be proximate to our communities. We come from those communities. We understand why we are in this work. We understand why we are in this work. Not to say that we ourselves don't, what's that word? We also don't like adopt white supremacist norms. I'm not saying that we are perfect in that way. We absolutely do. But I think that we also have the capacity to say, whoops, I made that or I made that decision and it wasn't congruent to who I am as a person and it wasn't congruent to who I am as an educator and as a professional, right? And so this is why I think it's so important that we build the community that we're building, that we demonstrate that there is power in our collective voices and there's power in the way that we show up in our classrooms. Marta, I love that. It's like always having to start with the prologue to who you are. Can we skip to chapter 1 already? Also, it's not our responsibility to read our own book, right? We don't have to do this work for ourselves. You have to do it for yourself. We have to adapt to the students that we're serving, right? We have to adapt to who they are and who they're becoming. We have to make sure that they are the ones that are centered in these conversations as well. And so it is incumbent upon us to understand who they are as humans, and to understand who they are as cultural beings. It is incumbent on us to do that work. We have to do it, and we have to do it for ourselves. Doesn't mean that we can't ask for help. It doesn't mean that there aren't resources out there, but it does mean that we have to be committed to doing this work, right? And so I struggle with it. You know, I don't like to be wrong. I know that may be shocking to some of you. I also but for the longest time in my life, I felt like I had to subdue some portions of myself in order to fit in. I am no longer interested in that. I am no longer interested in that because I believe that trying to fit in and trying to change actually causes a lot of harm to who we are emotionally. It causes a lot of harm to what we can actually accomplish when we stand in our truth. Because to me, the added value of being Latinx or Black is that we have this different perspective. We have this different cultural understanding of how the world can work and does work. And we can center these thoughts and feelings and make it easier for our students to be successful. People ask me with the data around that, and I can point to a couple of different research studies out there that say this work is what they are, is why it is. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Am I wrong? Am I making some assumptions that I shouldn't be making? Let me see, Graciela. Here we go. Let me put you back in. We are hired because we are educators of color, but then we have to defend and justify our perspectives every step of the way. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I get a lot of pushback on recruitment versus retention. And so a data point that not a lot of people talk about is the fact that Latinx teachers are actually coming into the field at the highest rates from any other community, but they're also exiting at the highest rates. And so it's not an issue as much of like bringing in new Latino teachers into the space. It is actually an issue if we can't retain the ones that we currently have. Because I believe in conversations on the ground with educators doing this work, I understand that they are consistently having to navigate environments that weren't designed for them to be successful in. That is a terrible experience. If you can't show up to work and feel fulfilled as a human being and know that your thoughts and opinions are valued and know that you are doing what's best for your students and that everything you say or do has to be scrutinized and I don't know, scrutinized is a great word for it. Like what kind of life is that? Let's not even add into the consideration that if you happen to be Spanish and you're Latino, all of a sudden, and if you're the only one in the building, all of a sudden you're the chief Latino community officer of that building. You're not getting compensated anymore for being that person. And you're probably doing it because you believe in the goodness, you believe in your heart that that is the right thing to do. And unfortunately today, we don't compensate educators for doing the right thing. And so that's burnout. That is that is all these things that lead us to have issues with retention, particularly in our community, and also with Black educators as well. The reason is we don't have cultures that are established that are welcoming to Black and brown folks. That's why teachers aren't retained. And so we also have to do the work as an organization to make sure we are in conversation in community with district schools, who actually are interested in doing this work, and making sure that they're preparing the environment. Because I am of the strong belief that we are able to recruit and bring in powerful Latinx talent into the education world. I absolutely believe that. I don't think that there is a deficit of that in our community. But if I'm going to go do the work of recruiting folks and talking about education and saying why it's important to our community, then we also have to do the work on creating the environments that are going to be sustainable for our educators to show up in. Some people say that's a little radical, but I'm okay with it being radical because I absolutely believe that our community deserves it. I want to see leadership being developed. I want to see ourselves in positions of influence and decision making. I want to see that happen. And I believe that educators are the way for that because I absolutely believe that leadership happens at school. I believe that the second that a pre-K student or a kindergartner walks in and they see themselves and they see that they can do things that other people may have not thought that they could do, that is where you cultivate leadership. And if you can continue to cultivate that and sustain that through the career of education, like what are you capable of after you leave school? That's my passion for this work. And that's why I do this work, because I absolutely believe in the educators that currently exist. I'm looking at the people in the comments, and these are people that I absolutely believe in. I love. I want them to be successful. I want them to show up as who they are. I want them to know that there is somebody out there in their world that absolutely loves them and wants them to be successful and will fight for them to be sustained in their work and to be just to be fulfilled in their work. I want that because I also want that for our students. And so I don't know how Susana does this on a week-to-week basis, so let me shout her out. Susana, if you're listening, if you're not listening, hopefully you're taking a self-care day. This is hard work. I don't know how to talk to myself sometimes, but that's what's on my heart today. I absolutely believe that Black and Latinx teachers being in the classrooms have an added value. I'm frustrated that we continuously have to talk about that. And I'm frustrated that we continuously have to build awareness of that. And I'm frustrated when I get conversations and people ask me like, well, where are they? My question is, with the pool of Latino talent that we currently have in classrooms, what are your organizations doing to recruit them? How are you being welcoming? How are you building cultures and environments that are going to be welcoming and inclusive of Latinos in your books? See, look at this. Marta says, my district presented demographics to the Board of Education last week, 9% staff of color, including custodians. The data is there, folks. I absolutely believe that our educators that are in the system today, I believe in their power, I believe in their energy, I believe in their love for the students, and I want to see you all be successful. I really do. Because I don't think of any better gift that we can give our students, Black, Latinx, white, otherwise, than showing them our community show up and who they are, knowing whose they are. That is so important for us and for our long-term sustainability and for the generational growth that we're going to see in our community. So having said that, if you disagree with me, I'm also open to dissent. I try to take on a growth mindset. So if you are disagreeing or something that I say doesn't really relate to you or resonate with you, let me know too, because I can always be pushed in my thinking. But at the very core of my spirit and at the very core of this organization is the representation of our community and the elevation of Latinx voices in these spaces. I want for people to see you as the experts that you are. I want for our community to celebrate you and to support you for leading the way, for pioneering in schools. I want all that for you. And I will continue to do this work to make sure it happens. and I have been fulfilled by the incredible people that I have met over the last couple of years. It has been so awesome to see our community doing their work, leading the way, being in those spaces and navigating. And I just hope that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because this work is a lifetime of work. This is not something that you just do for a day or do for a year and then say, oh, I didn't get anything done. This is a lifetime commitment. I hope that as we continue to grow as a community, as we continue to grow as an organization, that we all find tools to navigate these systems in a different way, and that we model these ways for our students, and that we give them the hope and the benefit of seeing talented Latinx educators, administrators, custodians, support staff, whatever it is, to show them that there is a different way and that there is hope in our community, that there is a future for our community, and that educators really are the glue that holds our community together. I absolutely believe that. And so I'm glad I have data that supports that. I really am glad that I have data that supports that. But quite frankly, y'all, I don't need the data. I see it in my interactions with you every day. I see it when I used to be able to visit your classrooms, seeing that passion that you have for the students, seeing the students run to you and say, oh, I can't believe, and speak to you in Spanish or whatever that is, like however they connect with you. That is so powerful. And all of that is so important to our community. Marta, I appreciate you saying that. Stories are data. We can also value qualitative data as much as we value quantitative data. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a researcher. That's not my expertise. But anyways, as I wrap up, I send nothing but love to you, our educators, our community of professionals. I celebrate you. I celebrate the work that you're doing. Know that you add value to your classrooms, and that hopefully you know that we are there to support you in your work, that we are there to support you in your spirit, and that we know the difference that you make for our students each and every day. And when you don't feel that from the rest of the community, please know that you have a space here that will always back you up, that will always be in community with you, listening to you, and hopefully affirming you in the work that you continue to do, because our students deserve it. They absolutely deserve you, and our community deserves it. So with that, have a phenomenal Friday. I can't believe I got through 30 minutes of this, so I'm going to celebrate that as my one for today. I love each and every one of you. Continue to do your work, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day. Adios.